Góði gestir, velkomnir til þessa fundar hér í Náttúrufræðihúsi Háskóla Íslands. Til fundar með MartaAndreasen. Það mér alveg sérstakt ánægjuefni að sjá ykkur hér og eins það að samtök fullveldisinna hafa sameinast þessa heimsókn, þessa gagnmerka fulltrúa, þessa gagnmerka Evrópuþingmanns frá Brussel sem hefur verið mjög skelegg og eftirsóttur fyrirlesari alla Evrópu, á Spáni, Frakklandi og víðar, flugmælsk á allar helstu tungur álfunnar. Erindi hennar nefnist The European Union, where is it going? MartaAndreasen, it's a pleasure having you here to address this gathering here at the University of Iceland. We so welcome your visit to this country. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here in Iceland, and I want to tell you that I admire your stance. I admire your stance against the pressure from the European Union. I would like to tell you that I was not born a Eurosceptic. I became a Eurosceptic as a result of my experience at the European Commission. In 2001, I was appointed the Chief Accounting Officer of the European Commission, and that meant I was responsible of the whole budget of the European Union, which today amounts to 140 billion euros. I thought I was entering an organization which I understood was a cooperating organization, an organization for collaboration amongst the member states, where the member states would share good practices amongst each other, and also, they would help the weakest economies evolve to the level of the strongest economies. But soon after I went into the European Commission, I realized I was wrong, and that the European Union intended to be much more than a cooperating project. My expertise was obviously in finances, and when I joined the European Commission, I was told that the European Union was undergoing an administrative reform to make their administration the best in the world. What I found there was amazing. I found it to have the worst control systems I had ever seen in my experience. And by that time, I had 25 years of professional experience, both in the private and the public sector. I found that they didn't have the minimum financial controls that allowed people to verify that before they gave the taxpayers' money that they received in their treasury to the member states, they would ensure that the money was going to be spent for the right purpose and by the right people. I tried to implement reforms. In my experience, there were a number of reforms that could have been implemented without spending a lot of money or even much effort. But I was always denied the opportunity to implement these reforms. Sometimes I was told there was no money, sometimes I was told it was not the right time. The problem I had was that I was responsible for each euro that came out of the treasury. I was responsible on behalf of the taxpayers of Europe, making sure that the payments were correct. And while they didn't allow me to make the reforms in the financial system, they were putting a lot of pressure on me to sign for those payments and sign accounts which I knew were incorrect, and they also knew were incorrect. This obviously created a lot of tension, and I'm sure that you are aware that after a period of confrontation, I would say, I ended up being suspended and finally sacked from the Commission because I literally refused to sign accounts that were wrong and payments that were wrong. My experience in the European Commission was a learning experience. And I think it was also a learning experience for them, because it was the first time that somebody stood up to the European Commission, to the European Union, to that powerful elite in Brussels, and told them, I think this is wrong, and I'm not going to continue doing this. They think that because I was a very highly paid public servant, and because I had a very high post, I would be happy to sign anything, and they were wrong. And I think this has left a message to them which I think they still resent to a certain extent. While they don't have these controls, and the situation continues to be the same today, you know that the European Court of Auditors, the only auditors that audit the accounts of the European Union, have refused to sign the accounts of the Union, have refused to approve the payments for the last 18 years. And it is not more than 18 years, because it's only 18 years that the auditors of the European Union exist. If they had existed for a longer time, we would probably be talking about 25 or 50 years. But instead of trying to improve these controls, what they do is come asking for more and more money every year. In February this year, David Cameron, the British Prime Minister, managed to negotiate for the first time a reduction in the long-term budget of the European Union. But until that moment, it was every year an increase that averaged between 6 to 12%. And the European Parliament, we, the MEPs, I am a member of the European Parliament, are supposed to defend the interest of the European taxpayers. So you would expect that these people would be controlling how the money is being used by the Commission and would vote against approving the accounts of the Commission. Well, wrong. The European Parliament, every year, against the background of the auditor's report that says the accounts are wrong, the payments are wrong, approve the financial management of this European Commission. Money is requested to fund member states, to get them to a higher level, to get their economies to a higher level. This is the supposed intention of the European budget. And this is what we are told when we are negotiating the budget each year. Now, my experience is that because they do not control how the money is being used, this money does not actually produce what people would expect, what the taxpayers would expect when they put the money into the European Union coffers. Now, let us look to some examples. The Greeks received 60 billion euros in structural funding in the decade before this crisis started. So I'm talking before 2008, between 1998 and 2008. The question is, what did these people do with this structural funding? Doesn't seem they improved their economies. They improved their infrastructure. Spain received 130 billion euros in the same period of time. What did they do with this money? Now, obviously, when the crisis started, everybody looks to these countries and say, you know, what's going on here? I am convinced that the European Union has a big responsibility into this crisis. Because firstly, they brought these countries into the straitjacket of the euro, where they have to supposedly be all at the same economic level. They funded them to develop their economies, but they didn't control if the money was going to the right people for the right purpose. And now we have what we have. We have countries who are having wasted a lot of taxpayers' money, have not got the level that they should have. I believe that the European Union is responsible for the crisis, and therefore I cannot think that the European Union is going to be the organization that's going to take the Europe out of the crisis. I cannot believe this, but I see this every day in the regulation that they vote and in the approach that they take to the crisis. Let me explain to you. The origins of the crisis in Europe are not the same in the different member states. Even if there is a common element, which is the introduction of the euro, there are different situations in the different member states. Greece had an active, 50% of the active population in Greece worked for the state, were civil servants. And 25% rest had the state as their sole customer. Now here comes the European Union and tells them to introduce austerity measures, which meant they had to cut off 50% of those posts probably or more. Now there are no industries in Greece, and nobody cared if the funds were actually going to develop any industries. So all these people who lost these jobs, have no opportunities in the future. Do you think these people are going to get out of the crisis? No way. Their only hope is that their tourism takes off. And for their tourism to take off, they need to devalue their currency. So their only hope is for them to leave the European Union. Angela Merkel said a couple of days ago that it was very wrong for Greece to have been accepted into the Eurozone. It's a pity she didn't say this 10 years ago. In Spain, the crisis was fundamentally due to the property bubble, a property bubble which was fueled by the low interest rates. What will austerity measures do to Spain when they haven't resolved the property bubble? They still have a real problem. Banks are full of these assets that they cannot sell because they are very highly valued. They have problems with the banks, and the European Union, instead of forcing those banks to go bankrupt because they have no way out, they have been bailing them out, again with taxpayers' money. And these banks are not passing on the money to the entrepreneurs. They are not passing on the money to the industry. I could go on with many different examples, but I think these are very visible. You know, Portugal, Italy, Ireland are many of the other examples. I would like to tell you that other than learning about the lack of controls in the financial management of the European Union, I also learned that the people who design the policies in the EU are people who have very little background on the areas on which they regulate. Because most of these policies have a financial impact, I, as chief accountant, always ended indirectly involved in these policies. And this is what I could do. And the problem with this is that these people don't realize what impact these policies are going to have in the different member states. In this context, I would like to refer to the common fisheries policies, which I think is an area of interest here. The common fisheries policy has been criticized even by the commissioner responsible Mr. Dananaki, she has said that the policy is a failure. And indeed it is a failure. I was involved last year in issuing a report on an opinion by the Court of Auditors, by the auditors of the European Union, in which they were evaluating if the money, if the European Fisheries Fund was being properly spent. And their conclusion was ludicrous. They were saying that 1.7 billion euros had been wasted in the commissioning of vessels, that 100,000 people had lost their jobs because of the inadequate policies, and that 90% of the stocks were being overfished. I thought, these conclusions were enough to call for the scrapping of the common fisheries policies. But in fact, this went to plenary, and again, the Parliament decided to amend my conclusions and say that instead of scrapping the policy, we should reform it, we should change it. There has been a change approved very recently, and the essential concept of this reform is that they have introduced the concept of the maximum sustainable yield, which means that instead of establishing quotas, they will allow member states to fish as much at the rhythm at which the fish population is being reproduced. Now the question here is who and on what basis is going to decide the rhythm of reproduction of the fish population. And guess what? It's going to be the European Union. And guess what? It's going to be probably these same people who have no common understanding or background or experience in the fisheries industry, the ones who are going to decide. There are many other policies I could refer to, but I think that this is an example, and the European crisis and the austerity measures are significant examples as well. Now, there is a movement now around, the Euroskeptic movement is growing in Europe, and in the country I represent, it's significant at this point in time. I'm a Eurosceptic, and I am a withdrawals list. I, responding to this question, see that the European Union is going nowhere. I don't think they understand the problems in the different member states. I think they have their own agenda, and that they use the European budget to pursue their own agenda, which is the federalist Europe. But I think the European crisis has made this visible for everybody, because they see they cannot produce the solutions to the problem. Now, in my country, in the country I represent, because I'm Spanish, so the country I represent, the United Kingdom, the Eurosceptic movement has been putting a lot of pressure, and the Prime Minister has decided that he will give the British people a referendum. But before he gives this referendum, he will renegotiate with the European Union a different arrangement, a different type of relationship. And I have to say that he has had some success when he managed to negotiate a reduction in the budget. But I have to say that I have been inside the European Union, and I know that it's very difficult that they will give in, that they will not return powers to the member states. This is something that I never see happening. So I see that his proposal is going to be very difficult to achieve, though I'm going to be one of the MEPs supporting the exercise and trying to help. Once we get this renegotiation, he's going to give a referendum for people to decide if they want to stay with this new negotiation or want to leave. And I think this is the best thing he could have done, because at the end of the day, there has to be a democratic choice. People have to be given the choice to decide if they want to be a member or not. Now, Iceland, has been now in negotiations for accession to the European Union. And very recently, these talks have been interrupted. In October, there's going to be some debate in the Parliament, and I would wish to see Iceland stay firm and say no to the continuation of the accession talks, because I don't think it is in the interest of this country to be a member of the European Union. I think Iceland is well enough being a member of the European Economic Area, and it gets all the benefits, and it doesn't get all the troubles, I would say. Though I would say some of this, yes, but most of the troubles don't come. So I would like to see Iceland stay firm. But because I have the experience of the European Union and the European Union bureaucracy, I know that they will keep putting pressure. They have already threatened with, stopping the accession funding, which is, I would say, natural reaction. But more things will come on. Their methodology is getting their changes or getting their advances through the back door. In the UK and in Europe, we are well used to this. And I think most probably this will be the case. So I would like to leave you with a message that it's pretty easy to get into the European Union, but that it's very difficult to get out of the European Union. And look to the United Kingdom, and you will see how difficult it will be for us to be able to leave. So I want to wish you the best. I'm happy to respond to all the questions you want to put. And this is all I have to say. Thank you for your attention.